One of the most fundamental differences between Latter-day Saints and Christians is our belief in the Great Apostasy. Latter-day Saints believe that there was a Great Apostasy shortly after the time of the Apostles, in which authority was removed from the earth, plain and precious truths were taken out of the Bible, and lots of doctrines were lost or corrupted. As Christians, we don't believe there is any such time of apostasy, but rather that Christ has been building his church from the time of his appearing until this very day. Now, one of the verses that Latter-day Saints use to prove the point that there was a great apostasy is 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 1. This is what Paul writes in that text. Now, the Spirit expressly says that in later times, some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to deceitful spirits and teachings of demons. This is verse 2. Through the insincerity of liars whose consciences are seared, who forbid marriage and require abstinence from foods that God created to be received with thanksgiving by those who believe and know the truth. So, many Latter-day Saints, when I'm talking with them, have said, see, the Spirit expressly says that some will depart from the faith. This is in reference to an apostasy, a period of apostasy in which many would fall away. Now, my response as a Christian is very straightforward, and it hinges on the word some. Notice he says in this text, in later times, some will depart from the faith. He does not say that all will depart from the faith, but rather only some. So I would say in no way can we look at this text and see it as a prophecy that all of Christianity would be in jeopardy because doctrines have been corrupted and truths have been lost. No, instead, the faith will be preserved and some will fall away from it by believing in false teachings. He says here, the teachings of demons. There have been a remnant that's been preserved. The wheat and the tares grow together until the harvest, as Jesus says in Matthew 13. And so I think there have been some who have not believed and some who have believed since the days of Jesus. The gates of hell have not prevailed over Christ's church. Now, interestingly enough, as a Christian, I do believe that this text is a prophecy of the LDS Church. I mean, that may be a really surprising statement, but consider the examples he uses to demonstrate people who are believing in deceitful spirits and the teachings of demons. He specifically says in verse 2 that the teachings of demons will come through liars whose consciences are seared, and this is what those liars will do. They will forbid marriage, and they will require abstinence from food that God created to be received with thanksgiving. Now, I just think that this is interesting because as Christians, we don't require abstinence from foods. We don't have a word of wisdom that says we can or cannot drink certain items, but Latter-day Saints actually do. The word of wisdom says that you can't drink alcohol or coffee or things like that. In fact, you cannot even get a temple recommend in order to enter a temple without adhering to this standard, this word of wisdom. Yet here, very plainly, that required abstinence from foods that God created, that is a mark of this very false teaching that leads some astray from the faith. And so I don't think that this is a prophecy of a great apostasy. I think that this is a prophecy that can be applied to a whole host of false teachings, including the false teachings of the LDS Church. So anyways, all things considered, I don't think that Latter-day Saints can use 1 Timothy 4:1 to really prove the existence of a great apostasy, even if you don't agree with verse 2 about required abstinence from foods. I think we can agree that in verse 1, Paul does use the language of some and not all, and thus this verse really doesn't apply to the issue of great apostasy.